This is your market update for Monday, November 3rd. All right, we're going to get started with the S&P cash weekly chart. And again, in the bigger picture, we've met, well, almost two major targets on the upside. We're just short of the second one that comes in at 69.58.5 or so. Also, we do have some time asymmetry with this prior swing. This was 28 weeks. This is 29 weeks. I always give it, plus or minus a week. So again, this would be some natural resistance to the move because we're extended and also because we have some time resistance there. It looks like, as far as, the last timing, yes, the 27th through the 31st, actual high was made on the 29th. But as far as the next grouping of cycles, which I've already started looking at, they come in 3rd through the 5th on this chart. And if the market's going sideways, I'm going to ignore it. But if we have like a direct move down or a direct move up into those cycles, that's when I'll anticipate a possible reversal of whatever we're doing into that time window. I mean, if we're still trading down into, early next week, then we will anticipate a possible low, which, is not out of the question since this is overall still a bullish chart as far as the pattern and bullish chart as far as the moving averages are concerned. It's just like we were a little bit overdone to the upside there. All right, let's take a look at now the December contract. Okay, so we did hit and hold a resistance there. Though this would have been, a counter trend short if you looked at that. And now I'm going to, start running the new support again, starting with 68.21.22 area. There's some symmetry in there. Also, 68.01 to 08, 67.90 to 95. A lot of areas to keep an eye on the way down. And again, we don't know which, if any of these, are going to hold. So that's why we wait and see. Like, let's say if we got down to here and then you started to see a trigger on a 15-minute chart and you started seeing a pattern of higher highs and higher lows, then absolutely you want to look at the buy side again, place your stop underneath the zone, and we'll go from there. But right now, let's just see, if we test some of these lower supports or not. Now, if we look at the 120-minute chart, this is in a sell mode at the moment. But again, there's, on this particular chart, there's actually more than one setup. One is going to be considered counter trend because, we had the moving average crossover to the downside and potentially lower lows and lower highs. So this would be, a counter trend support decision, but a setup. And so would the symmetry projection by itself. Those are setups by themselves. But on the flip side, if you're looking at this pattern, say, well, if you look at this, we have 618 of this full swing. Then we have 100% this prior rally, and this prior rally projected from this low. So a very interesting sell setup decision will come in at the 69.11 to 15 area. But again, you have to see if we test the zone. If we test the zone, does it trigger a short for you? Or do we just blow through it? And then in that case, we start looking for a new high again. Okay, so that's S&P 120-minute chart. I didn't do the timing on it, but next week Shannon will be doing the overnight charts because I'll be in Florida and I won't be able to keep a laptop on 24 hours or else it will probably light up on fire and crash. But anyway, here, again, we do have some levels on both sides. As far as NASDAQ, let's look at the NASDAQ. As far as the weekly chart, we definitely met two targets on the upside, okay? And as far as the daily chart, yes, we did have timing at this last high. Yes, we are seeing a little bit of a pullback, but I did a separate chart to show you the next grouping of cycles, and then I have anywhere from 4th through the 7th. But like I said, if the market's sideways, the timing's not going to be helpful. If we have a direct move, either up or down into those cycles, then we'll look for a reversal of whatever the market's doing into the grouping of cycles. Otherwise, we're going to leave it alone, okay? And just go by everything else, which is basically the setups. So now as far as the December contract, now we have a lot of support setting up. And again, we don't know if we're just going to get a micro pullback and a new high, or if maybe we'll get a deeper downside correction, maybe, similar to one of these larger declines, or if this is a way more important high and we get a much deeper downside correction. So just remember, just take it one decision to the next, and if something doesn't hold its zone, get out. Okay, but here are some areas to look at that stand out. All right, and then we have the 120-minute chart. Now this original support has held. We did have moving average crossover to the downside. So again, we have more than one decision on this chart, and both of them, have value. Here's the sell setup, the 786 of this prior swing. And then, I don't know if it was this low to high or if it was this low to high. So anyway, so this, was an area of resistance that ended up holding, but now we're retesting support. But I'm going to consider this a counter trend buy on this time frame chart. Doesn't mean you can't do it. It's just better when you have, time frames matching up. But plenty of support for you to keep an eye on here. As far as IWM. Now, I'm not going to call this a perfect hit by any means, but I believe it was close enough. As long as it doesn't, if you just look at it visually and it hasn't gone through it by much, I'd still look at this as an area for support. So 243.93 versus the actual low, 243.69. It's about 30 cents difference, right? Or a little less than that. And we're holding above it. I'm not sure on what time frame we might have triggered, but if this low remains intact, the potential upside target becomes this area here, 254.53. Okay, that's the big if. Also, right now, it looks like all the averages are still on the side of the bulls. Yeah, it didn't cross to the downside. So, I'm still okay looking at the buy side on this, on the daily chart. On the 30-minute chart, now the 30-minute chart did have the moving average crossover to the downside. So typically, you're waiting for a swing trade entry, you're waiting for either the 15-minute, the aggressive swing trade trigger, or the 30-minute, not so aggressive. We don't have a signal on the not so aggressive one yet. My guess is we may on the 15, but I still want you to be aware of this. This is something that we look at. You see this declining swing here. It's almost like drawing a trend line or something, but I'm looking at these prior rally swings, and these are smaller, like this low to this high, 283, and then we have this low to this high, it's 279. But we have like the largest swings within this decline are $3.30, $3.45, and those projections are here. So that's why this is a very important resistance. If we can't clear it, do not be surprised if you get another swing to the downside. So this is a setup. It is a sell setup. You have to see if it triggers for you next week. But then here, if we push through that same symmetry, like the largest amount, if we rally for, so 345 is the largest swing. Let's say we go to 360, 370, or 400 or something like that. Then that starts to say that, with that making, a deeper upside correction, that would be one of the first indications that we might have a more important low in place. So that's what I mean by watching symmetry of this last swing. I'm taking those largest swings, projecting them from here, and we haven't cleared it yet. So I say that we're still vulnerable to a failure here. All right, let's look at the others. As far as Apple is concerned, and my apologies for I wasn't paying attention to CNBC or anything else like that the other day. So, and I forgot to write down the earnings dates. So I was kind of, I didn't mention it in the video. My apologies. But here, we're closer to resistance. Also has some time resistance that would be early next week, but today would be considered to be within the time window for a possible high. But once again, all the averages are on the side of the bulls, so I'm giving it a couple of new setups here. I don't know if they'll hold or not. but 265.98 to 267.46, 261.95 to 263.79. Those are the two standout areas. I don't know, did I put this larger swing in below somewhere? Oh yeah, that's already down here. Okay. All right. And then, so those are a couple of setups. Now, it might be better if it takes a little bit longer than 2 days to get into support so that it's a little bit more even with these swings, but who knows? I mean, the setup's a setup. And we'll keep an eye on those areas. And then as far as the 30-minute chart, I'm not running the support on this one. I'm just showing you where, the last suggested stop would have been. If you wanted to, you could move it up to, underneath this low now, which is just a little bit higher. As far as Amazon, okay, so here's, again, I missed the fact that it was Amazon earnings. But we did have, before, we had a time and price hit, but then it was like take it from one decision to the next. We had already pulled back into support here, 221.93 to 222.75. There would not have been any graceful entry because we pulled back straight into the zone. And unless you bought without a trigger, or you had some sort of setup, because we did have the moving averages, cross back to the upside. Maybe you had an option strategy that wasn't a ridiculously high risk. Well, that was a nice rally, but I'm not going to run the new support on this chart probably until Monday. Okay, because like I said, every time you start from a swing here, that's the last bar, it doesn't remember the ratios, which is a pain in the butt. But, other than that, this is still the best program to work with. All right, so 30-minute. So I am going to give you some 30-minute support. Okay, so there will probably be some other larger projections down from like some of these larger swings. But to start with, I really have these smaller swings. This was the last pullback here. It held, who knew? But here, 242.65 to 243.95, one decision. 239.90 to 240.85, another setup decision. And then we have 233.28. Come on, 233.28 to 25. So there's 618 plus symmetry. So, at least 3 setup zones for you to look at on the pullback. As far as Google, we've met, I think we had met 3 targets. Yeah, we had met 3 targets off of this last swing. But guess what? All the averages still on the side of the bulls. So I'm giving you new support to look at. And I wanted to make it easier to see where those numbers go. I thought I had typed, there they are. I got to move these over a little bit so they don't disappear. Maybe I'll just bring it down here. Okay. So a general zone, 271.43 to 276.11 would be support. I mean, it's, it is a zone. But let's see if it triggers or not for a new entry, or are we going to get a deeper downside correction? Because, this, if you look at the weekly chart, well, you made 2 major targets. Target 3 would be this 314.68 off of this low. All right, let's see what else we have. Yeah, and also Google 30-minute chart, we're still on support here. If we hold it, this would be a target, this would be a target. All right, as far as Nvidia is concerned, I do have new support decisions for you on a pullback. I'd say at the moment this is going to be a royal setup because all the averages are on the side of the bulls. But as long as like the 513, because that will move a little bit more quickly, stays in a buy mode, then almost any of these zones might be a royal setup. You just have to keep an eye on, where these go. But 198.66 to 200.76, that would be my first standout decision in Nvidia. And then again, we could end up getting a deeper downside correction, but we're going to take it one decision at a time as we pull back. As far as the 30-minute chart, we failed at a 618 here. You did have the 834 across back to the downside, which kind of warns that we could get a deeper downside correction. But we do have, again, decisions to look at. The way we make money with this work is setup plus trigger equals trade entry, and then you manage it. And then the type of trigger you use really depends on whether you're looking at a day trade entry or a swing trade entry. Now, as far as Tesla is concerned, we're holding support on a pullback. We also have all the moving averages on the side of the bulls. This is a royal setup. This 437.21 to 439.23. Actual low was 439.61. Okay, not a perfect hit, but close enough. And then target 1 would be 474.45. Target 2, 483.93. If we end up, pulling back again while we're below this high, then these would be the other areas of support that I would have you look at in Tesla. 30-minute chart is back in a buy mode. We do have a hurdle on the way up. Oh wait, did I do this one? I take this low to this high and project from this low. Where are we? There we are. So it's actually, we have another level, 459.35. But then other than that, we have a triple cluster here. But if we can push through that, these are the upside targets in Tesla. Now, as far as gold, on the daily chart, this is not close enough for me to say that was a hit. But let's see what the 120-minute chart gives us. If this low is more important, even though it wasn't on, exactly on support, we did have some timing for low. And then here's what the 120-minute chart looks like. And again, there's more than one decision on this chart. This 40.21.50 to 40.23.64 is a sell decision. 40.29.60 to 40.30.26 is a sell decision. Support decision below the market. 39.72 to 39.80, and then a couple of other areas below the market. Again, setup plus trigger equals trade entry, and then you manage it. But if there's no setup, don't just try and guess. Wait for your setups. And then we have crude. I don't know if we're going to be switching to this next week. Crude is holding that other symmetry support. It does have a potential upside target to the 63.39 area. So let me type in target up there. That would be target 1. This would be target 2. Still have some mixed parameters here. We have the 513 in a buy mode. But we still have price below the 50 simple and below the 200. So there's a couple things working against it. But the 513 is in a buy mode. So I would prefer the buy side at this time. And then we have 120-minute chart. Again, there's plenty to look at, especially for day trading. But the areas that stand out for support, because, the case for the buy side on this time frame is that we took out a prior swing high, had the moving average cross over to the upside, and when that occurs, you typically want to watch the next pullback for a possible entry. Now, you can use this 618 by itself, but then we also have a cluster here, 60.29.31, and then another symmetry plus a 786, still another setup because symmetry by itself is a setup. So you can look at that, or, the first time that we tested this resistance, we did get a pullback, but if we retest it, not so sure that it's less likely to fail. But anyway, the potential upside target, if this is a more important low, again, is right up here. Now that's pretty much it, and I will see you guys Monday. Have a great weekend, and happy Halloween.